Meeting is being recorded, and this is Marlis talking right now. You'll see the next bullet down. Basically, we have our video turned off, and if we're not speaking, our microphones turned off just because of the bandwidth issue. So there are other members of the team on the call. So if the rest of you could introduce yourselves, why don't we start with Erica?
Hi everyone, I am Erica Murphy. I am the project manager for the Willamette Water Supply Program for the section PLW 2.0, which is the pipeline segment that runs through the corridor that we're going to be talking about today. So it's nice to see you all.
Libby, do you want to go next?
Yes, my name is Libby Bakke, and I work with Marlis on public involvement for the Willamette Water Supply Program.
And last is Kathy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kathy Fretwell, and I work at Kennedy Jenks Consultants, and we are the engineer working with the program to design this project.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Marlis,
yes.
I think David Marziniak is on as well.
Oh, yeah. So I think David and Christina were just going to hang out and listen in.
Okay.
But David can say hi if he wants to.
Hey, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
So want to point out that we're going to keep our microphones muted during the meeting, but that you can type in the chat function. There's a chat button on the menu bar of this Teams app. So if you have questions or things that you want us to talk about, please type in that chat function. And then we'll repeat your question aloud and answer questions as much as we can. And then we'll basically, once this meeting is over and we've written a summary with additional questions and answers, we'll post all of that to our website. I guess the last thing I want to say is, we're going to be in touch with you a lot over the next couple of years, and this isn't a one and done conversation we're having right now. If there are other neighbors that couldn't make it today, or if you want more information or just need more detail or anything like that, we're happy to do that, just maybe not tonight. And we will hang out after this meeting for a few minutes afterwards in case there are people who want to hang on the line and have a kind of a question answer session verbally. We just want to get through the presentation first. Okay, so we've done the introductions. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the Willamette Water Supply Program, which many of you already know. We're going to have an overview of the pipeline and then dive in a little bit to the rail corridor section and look at some construction photos, have some additional Q&A and adjourn the meeting. And like I mentioned, we can stay on the line for a little bit afterwards if people want to do that. So first of all, the Willamette Water Supply Program is a partnership between the Tualatin Valley Water District, the City of Hillsborough, and the City of Beaverton. This project has been under design for more than 5 years, and we have several projects under construction. So at the bottom of that map, number 1 is the water intake. We're building a new raw water pipeline in Wilsonville, and the intake at the Willamette River will be expanded through that project. We will be building a new water treatment plant east of Sherwood. That's number 2 on the map. And then there's 30 miles of large diameter pipeline, which is that dark black line on the map that you see. And then 2 15 million gallon water storage tanks on Cooper Mountain that will begin construction next year as well. All scheduled to come online in 2026. So the reasons for this project is to have an additional water supply for the future. It's going to be built to withstand the big Cascadia subduction zone earthquake that the region is expecting. It's an alternative source during water interruptions and droughts, and a backup supply if we have water quality issues with any of the other sources. So I think we're going to have Erica take over now and describe a little bit.
Slides and things go on.
Can we have everyone mute their microphones, please? And we'll get through the presentation and then we can have Q&A after. Erica, do you want to dive in?
Sure, thanks, Marlis. All right, so this project that we're talking about, since there's 30 miles of pipeline to be constructed, the program has split it up into several smaller projects to allow for the design teams to be able to more closely manage the projects when they're of smaller size. Plus the packages are smaller where local contractors have an opportunity to bid on the work because these aren't just over mega projects. So the section that we're talking about is it's the northernmost 3.3 miles of pipeline. And it's all going to be 48-inch steel pipe, welded steel pipe. And it's the section that we talk about, it's called PLW 2.0, Pipeline West 2.0, and it starts down on Corn Pass near Francis Street, which is down at the bottom of the map. And then it goes all the way up just south of Highway 26. And for the majority of the alignment, we are following within the Cornelius Pass Road right-of-way, other than a few deviations that you can see on the map. Along the way, there are 3 connections to the City of Hillsborough's water distribution system. So there's 3 locations where there will be a tie-in pipe that goes from this big 48-inch transmission main into the Hillsborough's water distribution system. The design right now is currently at 60% design. So we measure design and percent complete essentially as we go through and we get more and more details as we work on the design. So 60% design is really focusing on where the pipe will go horizontally and how deep it will go. So it's a pretty basic, making sure we know where we can fit the pipe between existing utilities, existing buildings, and site features. And so that's where we are currently in design. We have a plan to be complete with design by the end of this calendar year. So it's quite a rush for Kennedy Jenks and the team to get to design completion by the end of the year. And that allows us to go to construction as early as next summer. So we're planning on starting construction summer of 2021 and having that can be completed by the end of 2023. Next slide, please. So the section that we're going to talk about specifically today, we're calling it the Old Rail Corridor. So as many of you know, it was an ODOT rail right-of-way, and the program purchased the property a couple of years ago for the intent of putting in this pipeline. So we're calling it the Old Rail Corridor section. It's a bit wordy, but we think it tells the story. You can see that it's one of the few areas that deviates from the right-of-way of Corn Pass Road. The main reason for that is that it's not constructible within the right-of-way through this area because of Rock Creek and because of the TriMet tracks that cross over the top of the road. It's impossible to get the equipment that we need and get the pipes that we need within that part of the road. And so years ago, even before I was on the program, there was some foresight that getting this property would be the best option for the alignment. So you can see it goes through Aranco Woods Nature Park. There it has to cross the TriMet tracks. We will be doing a trenchless crossing, so boring underneath the tracks. And then from there, we will be doing open trench excavation all through the Old Rail Corridor and across Cherry Drive until we tie back into Cornelius Pass Road right-of-way at the north end. Let's see, I think that's it for this slide. So within the corridor, there were 2 options that we looked at. So the property is 100 feet wide, and I believe there's pictures later, but really the construction crews need about 50 feet in order to safely and efficiently construct the pipe. So there was a couple of options that we looked at, and we heard feedback early on from neighbors that, you know, keeping construction as far away from the homes would be ideal. So we naturally looked at what we're calling the eastern alignment, and that is shown there in yellow on this sheet. And it very closely hugs the eastern property line. There was another option that was more of a center alignment that essentially shows the pipe right about down the center of that old rail corridor. So some of the things that we looked at are constructability, looking at how much equipment we need to have on site in order to place the pipe. We looked at existing trees. We know there's quite a few trees along the eastern edge of the corridor, and there's also quite a few trees along the western edge behind people's homes. We looked at site access, both during construction, having trucks be able to drive in and out while the pipe is being installed, as well as having access once the pipe is in the ground and we need to do maintenance, making sure that there's proper access for the crews to maintain the pipe. So the eastern option ended up being the preferred alignment, and there was quite a few reasons that this was a better option than the central alignment. The number one is that it really reduces construction impacts to homes. The work is taking place farther away from the homes, so there will be less immediate impacts during the actual construction of the pipeline. Another advantage is, if a lot of you know, the grade really drops down as it goes east. There's kind of a ledge there. And so the farther east the pipe is, the shallower we can actually bury it. And with that, it's actually quicker to construct because the pipe is shallower. Another benefit is, since it's shallower, the pipe wall thickness doesn't have to be actually as thick, and it's a bit cheaper to put the pipe in this area as well. Another advantage of the eastern alignment is that we plan to preserve trees and shrubs along the western edge of the corridor. So there's quite a few trees that we've marked. I believe there's 70 or so along the western side of the corridor that we intend to protect in place while we do the construction. So that is really why we went with the eastern alignment for the 60% design.
Hey, Erica?
Yes.
There's a question from the audience before you leave this slide, which is, could you explain a bit more why the challenge, it's impossible to go up Cornelius Pass Road?
Yep, maybe if you just go back one slide, Marlis. And we did look again at it because, you know, I've only been on the project for the last year and a half, and I wanted to make sure that I fully understood all of the options too. So the real complicated part is that Rock Creek, you can see that it crosses over Cornelius Pass Road, and then where Marlis is pointing, it gets very, very close to the road. So there is a very long stretch of Cornelius Pass Road that is elevated. And next time you drive by, you may notice, if you look, there's a very, very long bridge that covers, it's more than just a bridge over a creek. It's a couple 100 feet long. And there's no way to get the pipe under the bridge with the abutments for those bridge abutments. And then another complication is that the TriMet tracks go right over the top of Corn Pass. So there's actually limited headspace to bring in equipment as well, because the size of equipment that would be needed to get this pipe in the ground would be very large, and there would be an issue being able to actually fit that equipment underneath the railroad tracks or the TriMet tracks to do that work. So it's just physically impossible to put a pipe in that within that part of the road. On the western side of the road, that's where the creek is. Essentially, you can see it follows the western alignment, so there's no way to put the pipe there where the creek is. And on the eastern side of the road, there's an apartment building that abuts directly behind the back of the sidewalk. So there really wasn't an option to go on either side of the road in that area either. So those are the three reasons why it was impossible to take that alignment. Even though, sorry?
Oh, I was gonna, go ahead and finish it.
Oh, the shorter route is usually the cheaper route, and so that's preferred, and that's always the first one we look at. But unfortunately, in this scenario, we weren't able to pursue that option.
And Erica, back on the forward slide. So Marlis, if you move to the next slide. There was one other question before we move on about, are there any trees already designated to be cut down on the west side that they see some trees that are tagged there?
So all of the trees have been tagged. That's part of a tree survey that we do, and it's a requirement of the city, and it's also just us doing our due diligence, is every tree that's over 8 inches diameter at breast height is actually surveyed. So if you do see a pin and a number in a tree, that does not mean that it's marked for removal or that it's marked to be saved. It's just merely a marking. So a survey of every tree that is on this property. And so that's what those numbers mean. It's
Right.
just a matter of species, we have the size, and we will also have an arborist on site to determine if there's any trees that need to come out for safety or health purposes.
Can we have everyone just make sure that their microphones are muted? Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so I
Ready
think
to go to the next slide, Erica?
yeah, just one more thing, actually, sorry.
Oh.
So we did split, we did look at both sections of the berm or the old corridor separately. For those of you familiar with the area, you know that the grading is a little bit different between the north half and the south half. There's different landscaping. So we did look at each section independently, thinking maybe one alignment would be more preferred than the other. It just happens to be that the eastern alignment was the most preferred option for both the north half and the south half of the property. That's it for this slide. Okay, so we're talking about the north half right now, the north half of the property, north of Cherry Drive. And what you can see in this is it's 100-foot wide property. So you can see at the very top of that graph, it says 100-foot total right-of-way width. So this is the area that we're working with. Now these trees are not necessarily representative, you know, they're approximate locations. It depends on where you are within the property, how many trees there are and where. But in general, there is a set of landscaping shrubs and trees along the western side of the property. So Marlis, if you can just kind of put your mouse on the west side of this area. Yeah, there you go. On the west end of those trees, that's where the people's house, that's where your houses are, is on this side of the, thank you, is on that side of the right-of-way. So those trees there, that's where we intend to protect all of the trees and shrubs in place during construction. The yellow circle is where we intend to put the pipe. It varies in depth, but we have at least 6 feet of cover on top of the pipe. And remember, it's a 4-foot diameter pipe. And then all the areas that are in that orange color, that is the construction width that we need to do the construction. So that the trees that are located within that zone will be removed for construction. And this is so that we can have, I believe there's another picture coming up, but for all of the equipment that we need on site in order to put the pipe in the ground. And then down below, sorry, I've got a menu bar blocking half my screen. I wish we could do this in person. Okay, well, is the after construction. So now you can see that we have the pipe in the ground, and we will have an access road that is immediately above the pipe. And that allows just pickup trucks, maintenance vehicles from Tualatin Valley Water District, who is the managing agency for this program, will be able to access this pipe corridor at any time and do maintenance activities. There's some above ground appurtenances, like air valves, some things that are very small that will be above ground that they need to maintain, as well as They just want to drive the pipeline to make sure that there's no visible signs of leaks or any other issues on the pipe. So we intend to put the permanent access road directly on top of the pipe alignment. You'll also see that we have some landscaping shown on the east side of the pipe. On average, I believe it's about 20 feet now from the access road to the eastern property line. We will be putting some sort of landscaping back in there. It's not been determined yet exactly what size plants would be going in there. That is something that we will determine at 90% design. So at 60%, we're really focusing on where the pipe can physically go for engineering purposes. We did geotechnical work, making sure that technically speaking, the pipe is in the right location. And at 90% is where we really figure out a lot of the details, such as what it's going to look like post-construction.
Erica, we have
Yes.
2 questions, if now is a good time for this slide.
Okay.
The first question is, if homeowners have items within the 33 foot of preserved trees, can those items remain there? And the second question is, will the road be paved, the access road?
Good questions. Marlis, I might look to you to help with the first question.
Yeah, so, you know, we've been moving closer and closer to asking people to remove their belongings. And it's both a matter of, you know, needing the space for construction, even that western edge, just to have the space clear, but it's also for long-term, you know, liability and ownership and that kind of thing that I think eventually legal and those folks are gonna really ask that there not be other people's personal property on this space. So I keep pushing for moving in that direction. We haven't gotten we haven't gotten a letter from them saying, you know, okay, it's time, we really need them to, you know, you need to ask everyone to do that and remove their property. But I just am encouraging people over time more and more to remove their stuff from that area.
And then the road pavement?
Yes, we are not planning on paving that road. It will most likely be a compacted gravel road. But again, that's a detail that we won't work out till 90%, but we do not plan on paving that road at this point.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you can go to the next slide, Marlis. So it ended up being that the south end of the property looks very similar to the north, although there's a little bit different landscaping in place and the grade is a little bit steeper on the east end of the property. It ends up being the same location that we've proposed to put the pipe. So again, the pipe will be about 20 feet off that eastern property line and will impact all of the trees that are along that part of the corridor. But the intent would be to maintain and protect all of the trees and landscaping in place on the west half of the corridor. So here are some pipeline construction photos. You may have seen some projects. Like Marlis mentioned, there's 30 miles of pipeline going in. Some of it's already been going in. A lot of it is going in now, and a lot of it is planned to be going in over the next couple of years. Excuse me. So you may have seen some of our other projects. Pardon me. So this is a 48-inch pipe. It's welded steel. You can see that it's coated with polyethylene, and that helps protect it from the soils for corrosion purposes. The interior part is cement mortar lined. And then you can see that there's bare ends that are not, it's just bare steel on either end of the pipe, and that's where the pipe is welded together. So once a piece of pipe goes in the ground, these are typically 40-foot long pipe sections, then the welders come in and weld the interior and the exterior of the pipe together to make sure that it's watertight and can hold pressure. You can see the trench width for a 48-inch pipe. The trench width is typically 8 to 10 feet wide, depending on what kind of soils we have. That's what we expect for the old rail corridor, as well as about 8 to 10 foot wide of an actual trench width. There's a big excavator you can see in that bottom picture. That's how the pipe is loaded in and out. It's brought in and lowered into the trench. There's going to be trench protection to protect all of the workers, since these are very deep trenches. On average, we have 6 feet of cover on the pipe, and a 4-foot pipe means it's at least a 10-foot deep trench. So we'll have trench protection, and we'll have an area for, I see am I getting too engineering, Marlis? And then we have, so we have the excavator dropping the pipe into the trench, and then we'll have the equipment needed to backfill after the pipe has gone in, and excavate before the pipe goes in, and bring materials in and out. So that's why we need that 50-foot zone. You can see in the pictures how much room it actually takes to install this pipe.
Erica, we
Yes.
have another great question, which is where will equipment, gravel, trucks, trench protectors be staged during the project?
Okay, so we have 3.5 miles of pipe roughly to go in the ground. So we are proposing a staging area along Cornelius Pass Road. That has not been finalized yet, but we intend to have the contractor store most of their materials somewhere along the main road. For the section that's going through the old rail corridor, there is an opportunity to use some area south of the fire station. There's some access off of Cherry Lane, and there is some area there that's flat that would most likely have be used as a small staging area for equipment. So that would be where we would bring in the pipe and any sort of materials that we need just for this old rail corridor section would be most likely stored just near the fire station. Good question.
Thank you, Erica.
So as I mentioned, we are currently at 60% design. So at this point, we've just focused really on the engineering of where the pipe can go, how deep it needs to be, and where it needs to be horizontally within the alignment. We are progressing right now to get to 90% design. That is planned on close to the end of 2020. We'll be at 90% design, and at that point, we'll have more details figured out, like exactly like what is the site will look like once construction is complete, what kind of landscaping, what kind of fencing, and security gates and things that we're going to install. We will work those out in the next 6 months or so is when we're finishing up the design. Marlis, do you want to talk about any more opportunities to get feedback from the neighbors?
Yeah, so we will be, I've been in touch with a lot of you for 5 years and have a pretty good understanding of what the concerns are. But when we have some more meat around the landscape plan and like Erica mentioned, any kind of security features, we'll be back with the neighbors to, just show them and see if there are opportunities where people can weigh in on that. Obviously the aesthetic and the security and the landscaping are all really big items of concern for the neighbors. So we're well aware of that.
And I did see another question come in that is another good one. Sorry to steal your thunder, Libby. For the trucks will be.
That's quite okay.
So at the Cherry Drive crossing, we do plan on having the trucks entering from Cherry Drive onto the north and south ends of the property. So most likely truck access will be both from Cherry Drive and then also from the fire station. So we may even have like one-way drive traffic. So the trucks come in one end, drive through, and then exit off of Cherry Drive. That's most likely going to be the least impactful way to do the construction. So
did you see the other comment? And there's a comment that just says great use of this, just a comment, great use of this land. And then from Scott, can you see those questions then?
Yes, north end section B says residential along 72nd.
And Erica, can you repeat the question before you try to answer it too, just because I can't see it?
Yes. So the comment is the north end section B graph says residential along northeast 72nd Avenue. Did you mean 73rd? So let me see.
Yes.
North, yes. North. Sorry about that. Yes, north end section B. Residential along 72nd Avenue. Where am I looking? Oh, yes. Yes, 73rd. Yes. Apologies for that. Another question just came in. How long can we estimate the actual disruption to last once construction begins? So that's another really good question. We assume that construction will likely take about 4 months to get through this property. Including, starting from one end, most likely, and working our way to the other end. We haven't quite figured that out for sure. It depends on the contractor and how many crews they would like to work on this, but we anticipate it would be about 4 months of actual construction through this corridor. In addition, we do have the Cherry Drive crossing, which is a little bit complex because the fire station is such close proximity that we need to make sure that there's uninhibited access for emergency vehicles. So we will have to stage the work across Cherry Drive to make sure that we always maintain traffic for emergency vehicles through there. But our best estimate at this point is about 4 months of construction.
Erica?
Yes.
This is Kathy. Let me just clarify that by definition. I'm not sure what the definition of the homeowners is for construction.
Kathy, can you introduce yourself? Some people have come on since after we did introductions.
Sure. I'm Kathy Fretwell with Kennedy Jenks Consultants, and we're the design engineer for the program for this project. And I just wanted to clarify, I wasn't sure what exactly, the definition of the homeowner of construction, because from the beginning of removing the material and installing the pipe to complete the restoration may take longer than 4 months. 4 months is more the actual time frame for installation of the pipe. And I just wanted to clarify that so we can make sure that there's good expectations around that.
Yeah, and also, it could be that weather is really terrible too and kind of delays us. So we like to build in some extra time and then, under promise and over deliver, hopefully. So, but yeah, it's, yeah.
And thank you, Kathy. That was a good point. Once we get the pipe in and we get the majority of the site back together and grade it, we will have an extra effort to come back in and do the landscaping. If there's any new fencing or anything else that's going in, that would be in addition to the 4 months. That's just like Kathy just mentioned, the 4 months is what we predict just to put the pipe in the ground through this area. So thank you for that. So do you want to go back to where we were? Do you want to cover that last bullet, Marlis, on the last slide? There you go.
Yeah, as a lot of you already know, I am every month working with the landscape crew to make sure that they're mowing adequately. I'll continue to be the person who works with TBWD to address, homelessness or anything else that's going on out there until we go under construction next year.
All right, we have one more question. It says the trees along the fence on the east side of the construction zone provide an important visual and auditory buffer for residents. How many will remain?
Okay, yeah, so I think Scott may have joined a little bit late. So so we have shown the preferred alignment for the pipe is along the eastern edge of the property. And because of that, most of the trees along the eastern edge of the property will be removed for construction. Actually, the next slide, Marlis, if you want to scroll down one. So you can see here that there's a 100-foot right-of-way for the property, and we need about 50 feet to perform the construction. And so the way we have it shown is that the pipe is about 20 feet from the eastern property line, and that's preferred for minimize constructing impacts to the residents and the homeowners on the western edge there, as well as just engineering practice for where the pipe, it's shallower and it's a better location for the pipe. But that does mean removing the majority of the trees along the eastern edge of that property.
Okay, and what are the normal working hours for the construction crews?
Yes, Marlis, did you want to cover this? I know you had been working. We plan to follow the city of Hillsborough's noise ordinances. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, we got those hours, and I don't want to say right now because I know I'm going to say it wrong. But the city of Hillsborough has allowed construction hours, so we would fall within those construction hours for the most part. And yeah, I don't know if there's really any more to say about that. And I can get those numbers and send them out to the group too.
All right, and I know you touched on this already, Marlis, but the question about who will manage mowing, landscaping, security during and after construction.
Yeah, so prior to construction, it's TVWD, as we've been doing it for the last several years since we bought the property, and they are the managing agency, so we'll be responsible for all of that work after construction as well. I know there's interest, and we received an email this morning from a neighbor who is concerned about security fencing and that sort of thing because of the homelessness issues. And TVWD is also interested in making sure that the property is secure. So we'll be working with the neighbors to make sure that whatever security fencing is installed, looks good and serves the purpose, and hopefully kills two birds with one stone.
So that's a good, the last question here is, will there be a permanent fence along our property? Now there's a gate gaining access to our properties.
I'm not sure I understand the question. So there's currently the fences along the backyards of the townhomes. There won't be any additional fencing between the townhomes and the pipeline. What I'm talking about as far as security is like at Cherry Drive, at the south end of the southern section near the fire station, just so people can't walk through there and set up a camp. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. There are gates on that fencing now, so that must be the fencing. Richard,
there's gates on the townhome properties.
Richard, do you mind unmuting just for 1 second to explain the question?
It looks like he may not have a microphone.
Okay.
My interpretation of his question is, if there's already gates that access this property, is there going to be another fence essentially that blocks that area so that they can't use their gates to access the property? That's how I'm interpreting that question.
And my understanding is the answer is no, even though we're encouraging people to not have their personal property and to not access that old rail corridor. I don't anticipate any other fence between the townhomes and the pipeline.
Oh, yeah, Richard said no voice. Okay, we have another question. Can we request a soundproof fence or barrier be installed?
Erica, do you want me to take that? So Soundproof walls are super expensive. It's basically like building a big retaining wall. So I am fairly, I would think at this point it's fairly unlikely that the money would be available to build such a long retaining style wall that would prevent sound movement. That's just my initial gut. So I don't know if you have anything else to add on that one, Erica.
I don't have anything else to add on that one. We'll look at options when we proceed to 90% design. But I agree, it is an expensive option, which I think would be difficult to find the funding because it's a very long property when you go from the north end to the south end.
All right, there's no further questions at this time, Marlis.
Okay, so I think what we're going to do is I'll go to the final slide here, and we can hang out for a few minutes if people want to ask some more questions, or if people want to unmute and ask some questions. Or we can just be done and you all know how to reach me and we can have more conversations. So it kind of depends on interest and if anyone chimes up.
You have a thank you from somebody.
Oh,
Thanks,
great.
very helpful.
We super appreciate all of you being here tonight, and also I mentioned this at the first start of the presentation that we're happy to do this presentation, you know, for in the future, in the next few weeks, if there are neighbors that couldn't make it, or if you need more information, we're happy to jump on another call like this with you if you have more questions, and we'll just add those questions to the frequently asked questions list, so that everyone can see what the answers are to those questions.